It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Greetings, salutations, welcome to a brand new edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 582. We try to interact with you at least once a week during this offseason with what we like to call a mailbag, a Rico Brogna mailbag, where we read a lot of your emails on a variety of Met-related subjects, and that's what we will be doing on episode 582. You could always interact with us by emailing the Rico @gmail.com. Before we get right in your emails, a couple of news and notes around the Mets over the last 24 hours. No surprise, Edwin Diaz was made the qualifying offer. He's clearly going to turn that down. And yes, if the Mets lose Edwin Diaz as a free agent, as pissed off as we will all be, at least we know that we get the benefit of a fourth-round draft pick. The Mets also brought back Jose Castillo. They claimed him off waivers. Remember, Jose Castillo was one of the valuable parts of the Syracuse shuttle in 2025. He was actually one of the more valuable parts of the Syracuse shuttle. I think he won a Rico I'm the Man Right Now star of the series once and contributed as a left-hander out of the bullpen. So I think that bringing him back inevitably means they will DFA him 5 more times, and he will continue to come back and hopefully be as productive and helpful as he was in 2025. But he's just another member of the Syracuse shuttle. Another guy they brought in was Jihan Bue, a utility player who can play second base in the outfield. There are 2 issues with Jihan Bue. Number one, he's not very good. Number 2, about 7 years ago, he was accused, and I think more than just even being accused, I think he was confirmed that he beat up his ex-girlfriend. So 7 years doesn't exactly heal all wounds, especially that. I would prefer not to sign a player like that. You know, unfortunately in sports and in the world, the bigger star you are, the better player you are, the more that teams are willing to put up with transgressions off the field or off the court. When you are a light-hitting utility, whatever he is, outfielder and infielder, like I said, could play the outfield and the infield, I wouldn't put up with that. So I saw that signing, the claiming off waivers of Jihan Bue, and yeah, he's just another name you throw out there, but when you see his checkered past, you do wonder, and it's a fair question, why? Nick Madrigal, remember Nick Madrigal? Remember that guy? Mets brought him in before spring training. He got hurt. He appeared to be a replacement for Jose Iglesias. We never saw him because he got hurt. He is elected free agency. The Mets also hired a third base coach. They brought in Tim Leeper, who had previously been the third base coach of the San Diego Padres, and before that, the Toronto Blue Jays. This coaching staff build is very tough to be passionate about or opinionated about because who knows? Just like who knew that Anton Richardson would be the secret to Juan Soto stealing 1 million bases. The other news and note, not involving the Mets, but could certainly impact the Mets. Number one, Trent Grisham was made the qualifying offer by the New York Yankees. We are going to do a Rico Brogna in just a few days talking about position players who are free agents. My view on Trent Grisham was never that high. He was never a guy I wanted to target on a multi-year deal. Now that there's a draft pick attached to him, no thank you. It's one thing to give up a draft pick for a top-line free agent. It's one thing to give up a draft pick for Juan Soto. It's another thing for Trent Grisham. And we remember how much the qualifying offer draft pick hurt Pete Alonso in free agency a year ago. It wasn't the only thing, but certainly contributed to it. I would assume the same thing is going to happen to Trent Grisham. So when we talk about these free agents, pitchers and position players, and like I said, we're going to do a bunch of those in the next few days here on the offseason Rico Brogna's, I have to admit, as much as I want the team to win right now, I have a tough time giving away draft picks for players that I just don't deem that good. So the impact of the Grisham qualifying offer makes him, to me, instead of a C- free agent, probably a D- free agent. But the surprise was Pete Fairbanks. Pete Fairbanks, the closer of the Tampa Bay Rays, had a team option that was $11 million. And so when I was preparing for another Rico Brogna we will do, probably a week from now, closers and relief pitchers who are free agents, I kind of looked at Fairbanks and the $11 million and assumed that Tampa Bay would pick it up. Because if they did pick it up, they could easily trade him. Who wouldn't want to trade for Pete Fairbanks on a 1-year, $11 million deal? So to see that the Rays didn't pick up that option, I find very surprising. And we'll see how he does in free agency, what Pete Fairbanks ends up signing. But I would have figured that if they picked up his option, he would have been a very tradable piece. I know we would have talked about him as a tradable piece. In fact, if I'm trying to remember back to replacing Edwin Diaz, the episode we did about a week or so ago that you could check the archives for, I think when we mentioned his name, I said he's going to cost too much, not via money, but via trade, because I assumed that Tampa Bay would pick up that option, try to trade him, and would be too expensive. So I found that to be one of the surprises of the option decisions that were made around baseball. So Pete Fairbanks is another reliever option as a free agent. And I think I speak for most of us, certainly not all of us, that I hope Fairbanks is an option as an eighth inning guy, because losing Edwin Diaz makes me queasy. Over the last 48 hours, everyone is putting out their free agent predictions. I know that we're going to do it on Evan and Tiki early next week. Really the main ones, maybe the 10 biggest free agents, will all predict where those guys are going to end up. Edwin Diaz is being predicted to go. I've seen some experts say the Dodgers. I've seen some experts say the Yankees. I mean, look, the truth is this, and I get that there are overpays, and is it going to be risky to give Edwin Diaz at his age a, let's say, 5-year contract? Of course it's risky. I mean, honestly, free agency is risky as a whole. I admit that. I know that decisions like that come with major risk. But number one, losing Edwin Diaz is a body blow to whatever the Mets are trying to build in 2026. Because whatever your plan is, whether it's Robert Suarez or Pete Fairbanks or someone from within, it's a step down. It is. And is it possible that you bring in a guy and they're dominant in 2026? Of course, relievers can be that way, but you are just adding another question to a team that's likely to go into next season with some questions to begin with. So losing Edwin Diaz, I don't care where he goes, is a huge hit to this offseason in the beginning of 26. To send him to LA, I mean, could you imagine? And to answer your question, yes, I could. I mean, could I imagine? They signed Tanner Scott last offseason. They signed Kirby Yates. Granted, those things didn't work, but they tried. And when you look at the two-time defending world champion Los Angeles Dodgers and you say to yourself, what's their biggest weakness? What could the Dodgers use more than anything else? It's clearly a stopper at the end of games. So why not go get the best one out there? Now, I'm trying not to get upset by predictions. They're merely predictions. We can do a Rico like that. Everyone can do it. They're educated guesses, but no one actually knows how this whole thing is going to play out. But seeing Edwin Diaz rumored or predicted, I should say, to the Dodgers or the Yankees, or really to any team but the Mets, does give me quite a stomachache. So we'll see how that unfolds. Let's get to some of your emails, the ricob@gmail.com. I even printed them out to be nice and organized. This is from Steve. Steve writes, hear me out. Point number one. Perhaps I'm naive in thinking that all Japanese players know each other, but wouldn't you think a ripple effect of trading Kodai Senga is him telling other players not to come here? I think those players believe there's a silent no trade clause on their first contract in America. From his point of view, he moved 5,000 miles, and after his first and only stretch of ineffectiveness, they demote him and then trade him. It's not a good look. Point number two, Senga is the definition of a Stearns pitcher. He's got a reasonable contract, some past success, an injury history, and he's a buy low commodity right now. So let's attack a few of those things. Number one, I am not concerned about Kodai Senga telling other Japanese players to not come to the New York Mets. Japan is a huge country. It's a huge baseball league. And what I think we should get past in 2026 is that while we see similar windups from pitchers who come to Japan and some similar tendencies, like a lot of guys throw splitters and similar batting stances, that little running swing, these are human beings, and they're all very different. And think about this for a second. One of the biggest critiques of Kodai Senga, and it's been relatively fair at times, is that everything needs to be perfect for him to pitch. Some of this the Mets' own doing, but Senga needs an extra day. Senga needs all his body parts to feel great. If anything is off, it will affect his effectiveness, right? I mean, that is certainly something we've heard about Kodai Senga, and as Met fans, we've criticized him for. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 25-year-old, second year in the major leagues, literally pitched on 0 days rest. Went to Dave Roberts and said, screw it, let me pitch. That could not be any more different than what we've seen from Kodai Senga. So let that be a reminder, good, bad, indifferent, that no, I don't think there's any kind of connection. And I think that any decision to trade Kodai Senga should be made on the best interest of the New York Mets and not what you think he's going to tell other players. Your second point about him being the definition of a Stearns pitcher is kind of funny because you're right. It is a reasonable contract. He does have an injury history. Is he a buy low commodity right now? Probably. I don't think that the Mets trade Kodai Senga and get a ton back, but I also don't think they would give him away, nor would I give him away. You know, when we talked in My Mets Plan an episode ago on Rico Brogna, I did talk about trading Kodai Senga for a prospect, and I did it to clear up money to spend elsewhere because, again, I am assuming that Steve Cohen has some level of a budget. I am not interested in having to pay off Kodai Senga's contract just to get rid of him. I think that's foolish. I don't think that makes the New York Mets better. I would want something of value back. And if the truth is I'm wrong that he doesn't have any value, then you don't trade him. But I also want the Mets to believe in him. And their actions over the final 2 weeks of the season, in which they demoted him and then did not recall him, despite all the issues the Mets had in their rotation, was a sign that they don't believe in him. And keep this in mind about David Stearns or Kodai Senga being a David Stearns kind of guy. David Stearns never signed Kodai Senga. That was a Billy Epler signing. So sometimes you wonder, with the guys that David Stearns didn't bring in, what is he actually thinking concerning him? Speaking of Japan, let's read this email from Mark. Mark writes, about Munetaka Murakami. Evan, I saw this stat on Twitter, and I don't want to take any credit for it, but what are your thoughts? And here is the stat he is showing me. It is tweeted by James Shiano. James writes, Murakami had a 0.95 batting average against pitches 93 miles per hour or harder last season in the NPB. What are my thoughts on it? I mean, there's a level of concern. It is very difficult to judge Japanese baseball players because we don't see them. So everything we judge about Okamoto, who is the first baseman, third baseman who defends at a high level, right-handed hitter, 29 years old, and Murakami, left-hand hitter, 25 years old, just got posted, so the 45-day window is about to begin. All I know about them is what we read and the stats that we read. And so our opinions are being formulated based on what people tell us or how we want to interpret stats. I get that in baseball, we don't watch every single game of, let's say, Josh Naylor. You know, we're not watching 162 Mariner games, but we do watch him play baseball. And so I feel comfortable formulating opinions about Josh Naylor or an opinion about Kyle Schwarber. And the thing about guys like Murakami and Okamoto is not that I don't want the Mets to sign any player from Japan. It's not true at all. It's just very tough for me to sit here on the Rico and say, bang the table, which I can do right now, or banging the table, bring this man in. Or the opposite, being afraid of him and not wanting him. But let's do our best to dive in on Munetaka Murakami without ever seeing him. The 0.95 average against fastballs, 93 or harder, I can't dismiss that. Now, does that mean that when he sees a heavy dose of 98 and 99 at the major league level, he won't be able to make adjustments? I don't buy that at all. Because if you think about Japan, and you think about the Japanese Baseball League, and these are questions because I genuinely don't have the answer, not watching the league all the time. How many 98-mile-per-hour fastballs is he seeing? Is this a case in which Murakami and Japanese hitters are just seeing heavy doses of off-speed pitches because that's what most pitchers throw, and they're not seeing a lot of high heat? And so while that number jumps out at you and you say, well, will he ever be able to adjust? The confidence would be, well, when he sees more 97-mile-per-hour fastballs, he will adjust and he will be fine. The problem is the price tag on Murakami is going to be really high. I mean, you are looking at, should I say an Alonso-like contract? Probably. I mean, he's going to get $160 million. So he'll get more years, probably less dollars per season. And we don't know what he is. Now, I pulled up his numbers from the last 5 years. Let's try to dive in, see what we could figure out. Again, he's 25 years old. So the season he just had, in which he only has played 56 games, so it's not a huge sample size. This is his age 25 season, and his numbers are 286, 24 home runs, 52 RBIs, 71 strikeouts in 56 games, and a 1,000 OPS. So pretty good. No question. A lot of strikeouts, a lot of swing and misses. Can't deny that. But certainly the power numbers are there. Last year, 2024, 143 games, 244 average, 3386, 180 strikeouts, 850 OPS. What does that sound like to you? Like, I just gave you those numbers. Does that sound like anybody we know? Because those numbers jumped out as Pete Alonso's numbers from 2024. They're not very different when it comes to home runs and RBIs. The batting average feels the same. There's a crap ton of strikeouts, and the OPS is the same. So it's one of those cases where I'd say, do you see a difference between, in fact, I'm pulling up Pete Alonso's numbers right now from 2024 just to see how similar they are. Here we go. 2024. Pete Alonso hit 240. Murakami 244. Pete hit 34 home runs. Murakami 33 home runs. Pete drove in 88 runs. Murakami 86 runs. Pete struck out 162 times. Murakami 180. OPS for Pete was 788. For Murakami was 851. So what you see from that is OPS is definitely higher. Murakami draws more walks. He is more effective at that aspect than Pete Alonso, but he also struck out more. So, and that's just one season, in fairness. It's also just one season of Pete as well, but he feels like a left-handed version of Pete Alonso. He's also younger, right? He's 25 years old, so that should be appealing. You're talking about a baseball player that's 5 years younger, and the scouting report on Murakami is that he doesn't defend well. But he can play third base and he can play first base, but really feels like a designated hitter. So to me, if you sign Murakami, you're hoping he's Pete Alonso because that would be maintaining most of his Japanese numbers. He defends like Pete Alonso because Murakami's not a great defender, and we know how people feel about Pete's defense. The difference is he's left-handed, he's younger, and there's that boom-bust angle to him because Pete Alonso's a sure thing. You know, he is what he is. He plays 162 games. He's always healthy. Certainly years will vary like 24 did to 25, but you can basically write him down. He's going to hit 30 home runs. The average will be, I guess, anywhere now between 220 and 270, but Pete plays and will give you an OPS that probably begins with the number 8 if we are guessing. So am I intrigued, or are you intrigued by replacing Pete Alonso with what I just described? Now, just to give you a few more years from Murakami, and this I find sort of interesting. If you go back to 2022, and that's his age 22 season, he hit 318 with 56 home runs and 134 RBIs and a 1,168 OPS. I will admit to you, that is nowhere like Pete Alonso. But the reason I don't put a lot of stock in it is that was 3 years ago. He had a year in 2023 in which his average dipped to 256 and his OPS was a very respectable 875. I mentioned the 2024 numbers that were similar to Pete's 2024, and the current year, the average up to 286, 24 home runs, 52 RBIs. So am I really expecting a 318 batting average because he did it in 2022? Probably not. And I've gone over some position players that come over from Japan just to see, like, is there a big drop off? What does it usually look like? And the truth is, especially if you compare him to a guy like Hideki Matsui, you do expect a little bit of a drop off. So that's my breakdown of Munetaka Murakami. I would almost be intrigued by him as a signing with Pete Alonso, with the idea being Murakami can play third base, can play first base, but he would be a most of the time designated hitter. And this is a team that really hasn't had a DH, a full-time DH, or really a lot of production out of DH since the DH came to the National League in 2021. So the appeal of Murakami, different than Kyle Schwarber, is that he can play a position. He may not play it well, as the scouting reports say, but he's 25 years old. He can play first base for those that want Pete Alonso to DH a little bit more. He can play third base. And we'll see what third base turns into for this team. I think we're penciling in Brett Beatty to be the third baseman, but Brett Beatty could very well be traded. Who knows? So that's how I view Murakami. I don't love him as a Pete replacement. I would be more intrigued by another bat to go along with Pete. I've talked about this before. The Mets didn't hit enough last year. So improving the offense, while not the priority, because yes, they want to improve the pitching, rightfully so, and the run prevention, as David Stearns pointed out, but they do need to score more runs. Let's get to another email. Good one, by the way, by Mark, bringing up Murakami. Lucas writes, Evan, I was kind of with your offseason plan until you said Luis Arise. You cleared Jeff McNeil's one-year salary to give him $45 million? Well, we have 1,000 mid-infield prospects. Come on. And I came up with how you came up with this odd plan. Oh, he's got a theory. By the way, Luis Arise, and I mentioned this in the My Mets Plan edition of the Rico, maybe you need to re-listen to this, is that he would eventually get a lot of time at designated hitter, where he can play second base, but once Jet Williams takes that, or Ronnie Mauricio or Luis Angel Acuna takes that, Luis Arise could end up being your most of the time designated hitter. Different than Murakami. I wouldn't put all of these guys together because now you're talking about multiple DHs, but I would equate Arise similarly used to the way I just equated Murakami. Obviously, far different offensive players. I mean, one guy can't hit the ball over the fence unless he's facing the Mets, and the other guy could do it 50 times. But I viewed Arise as a guy who would eventually DH. Anyhow, let me get to his theory. Your wish list includes Freddie Peralta, 4-0 with a 2.7 ERA against the Mets in his career. Ranger Suarez, 5-3 with a 3.27 ERA against the Mets in his career. Harrison Bader, 351 with 4 home runs against the Mets in his career. And Luis Arise, 417 average against the Mets. Bold strategy, Cotton. You get the Met killers who produce less against every other team. You're great, but I'm glad you don't make the decisions. Ranger Suarez is a soft-throwing lefty who's going to demand 7 years. Not happening. Freddie Peralta makes sense due to your Corbin Burns comp and mild package back. Harrison Bader is not that different from Tyrone Taylor. So your plan is, as the kids say, mid. And one last thing, are we certain Carson Bench is going to be a center fielder? The guy who wasn't mentioned is still Luis Robert Jr. He's the bridge to Bench and maybe lightning in a bottle in a new setting. So, Lucas, I rethought my plan. Because of a name that kept coming up when we did the Rico Brogna. Again, a name that was brought up on Evident Tiki, a name that we've heard a lot about, and that's Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger, in a perfect world, would join the New York Mets along with keeping Pete Alonso. Now, is that too rich for Steve Cohen, especially considering they will be spending money on pitching? Maybe it is. I admonished Hoffman for his over-the-top Met free agent plan that included signing literally everybody, I think you could make Bellinger and Alonso work. I think if you clear out McNeil's money, I think if you dump Senga's money, and I think if you keep Pete and keep Edwin, obviously with probably more money spent on them upcoming season than the past, I don't think it's crazy to get Cody Bellinger on a long-term deal in which maybe you're paying him, let's say, $25 million a year. But I want you to hear me out on why Bellinger is becoming my new plan A with Pete Alonso. Cody Bellinger improves the Met defense at 4 different positions. If the Mets sign Cody Bellinger in conjunction with Pete Alonso, he's the opening day center fielder until Carson Bench is ready. When Carson Bench is ready, Cody Bellinger can play a bunch of first base. Let's say 40 times in 2026, which gives Pete Alonso 40 games at DH. Cody Bellinger can also play another 40 or 50 games in left field, which gives Brandon Nimmo a great opportunity to DH. Cody Bellinger can then play maybe 30 games in right field, giving Juan Soto a chance to DH. Cody Bellinger could be the DH bat the Mets have always wanted without ever DHing. He's the guy that makes other guys DH and improves defensively at every position he plays. So when he replaces Pete at first, the Mets are better defensively. When he replaces Nimmo in left, the Mets are better defensively. When he plays right and Soto's DHing, the Mets are better defensively. That's where I think Cody Bellinger is becoming the new plan A. So scrap Luis Ariz. Scrap adding any other bat. Keep Alonso, add Cody Bellinger, and while, yes, you are handing out 2 long-term contracts to guys in their 30s, so 4 years from now may be scary when you look at all the different guys that are signed long-term, but I think for the next 3 years, you've significantly improved yourself defensively in 3 different places. So, but good thought, Lucas, that my Met plan was all about signing Met killers. I mean, think about it this way. If they're not facing the Mets, they can't kill the Mets. Wasn't that the whole thinking around Jesse Winker? And it sort of worked out.
Hold on a second. I just have to throw it out there. Because just because they're not facing us doesn't mean they can't kill us, because you can kill us the other way. Basically go full Jason Bay.
That is true. It's a risk. That is certainly a risk that comes along with it.
Listen, I do appreciate that you could take a loss, take the L for the Luis Ariz. Because, listen, I'm not going to sit there and say that Ariz is not a bad player, but the one thing I would hate is to, like what the last email I said was, you're getting rid of McNeil because he's really not this super power hitter, whatever the case is, whatever type of hitter he is. Luis Ariz is better than McNeil, but you're still missing a lot of different things that you are looking for, and Bellinger kind of fills that gap on all levels. So I'm glad that you turned to a new plan A.
Yeah. Yeah. If the finances work, I mean, that's the real question with all of it.
Hey, listen, I don't know if the first thing you heard from me, or maybe not the first thing, but one of the major pieces to my plan, defer. Defer, defer, defer. If you want to go, and I understand it's going to be costly, and it might sound stupid, but give Pete a little bit more money. Give Cody a little bit more money. Defer it.
The Mets tried to defer with Pete Alonso last year. He was not interested. You need people that want deferrals. Not everyone does. So keep that in mind. I heard one of the offers to Alonso included some big deferrals, and he was not feeling it at all. So it's not a magic word. Doesn't work on everybody. Let's go to Daniel Lang. Daniel writes, Evan Hoffman, it's time to get the Mets fans rallied up for a frontline pitcher. So I have some Craig Carton-like sayings with some explanations under them for some of the guys I would want the Mets to sign or trade for. If they signed any one of these guys, I would be pumped. Before I read this, what he is saying is, Craig back in the day with Boomer and Carton was the name of the show. He had a slogan for getting Brett Favre. I forget we want Brett the best. I honestly forgot.
Suck for Brett? Suck for Brett? No.
That's not. It was a long time ago, and I remember as his coworker, I hated it because I didn't want Brett Favre. But bottom line is, just to explain for anyone who's like, what does that mean? Craig would, when he wants something, would have his megaphone and then do a rhyming chant. Unfortunately, Craig probably won't know any of the players that are being named right now by Daniel. And he'd admit it too. So I'm not speaking out of tune here. All right, let's hear the rhymes and the players that Daniel wants. Almost anybody's movable. Trade for Scooble. That's a good one. It's actually not. It doesn't really fit very well, but let me try it in a chanting voice. Almost anybody's movable. Trade for Scooble. I would move anybody outside of Nolan McLean in a package to acquire Tarek Skubal. That's why I say almost anybody. I heard Jeff Passan the other day talking about the Skubal situation, and he made clear the Tigers would ideally like to keep him, and Skubal would ideally like to stay in Detroit. So there's your headline. Like, the Tigers want him. Skubal would like to be there. The problem is Skubal wants to get paid more than anything else. And Jeff went on to say, look, the Tigers have to think about it. They've got to think about the possibilities of losing this man for simply a draft pick. And it reinforces something I said on the Rico that a lot of Met fans disagreed with. I still get crap for, and that is my trade proposal being way too much. And, well, what about Garrett Crochet? What about Corbin Burns? What about Johan Santana? What about Mike Hampton? Like, every trade ever for a great pitcher. Why was that less? And there's a big reason why, and I said it at the time, and I feel even more emboldened by it now, because the Tigers don't have to trade him. The Minnesota Twins had to trade Johan Santana. The Milwaukee Brewers had to trade Corbin Burns, and everybody knew it. The Detroit Tigers could say, and this is what I honestly think they're going to do, we have a very high ask for Tarek Skubal. If you give it to us, we'll move him. If you don't, screw it. We'll try to win a World Series, and if we lose him for a pick, at least we gave it that crack to win a championship. And that is why the package I created for Skubal, which was Alvarez, Peterson, either Jet Williams or Carson Bench, either Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong, I think while it may sound crazy, honestly, I think that's the kind of deal that would need to be offered for the Tigers to say yes. But I do agree with you, Daniel, before I get to your other rhymes. Nolan McLean, off limits.
By the way,
yes.
I found the, unless I'm wrong, the Craig Carton chant was, let's get Brett.
It was that simple?
That's what I found. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's there were other ones that he definitely did. It wasn't for Brett Favre, though. It was for damn, now I can't remember who it was.
I forgot.
He's done some other ones. But that's the Brett Favre was the let's get Brett.
I feel like an awful ex-partner that I can't remember any of this stuff. My bad. For Joe Ryan, stop the whining. We want Ryan. I mean, whining referring to people demanding a trade or to acquire a top of the rotation type of pitcher. Joe Ryan, I think, will also be very costly because I think the Twins are also in a spot where they don't have to trade him yet. They will have to trade him at some point, but not quite yet. Don't be petty. Go get Freddie. That's, of course, for Freddie Peralta. Petty as in Stern's lack of thinking he doesn't need to invest in top-end pitchers besides a select few, even though Freddie is under contract for cheap. I think the Brewer connection leads us to think that this feels very reasonable. I think this is reasonable. I wonder a few things about Milwaukee trading Freddie Peralta, who I do think they're going to trade. Is there a preference to send him to an American League team? Like, I think back to the Corbin Burns deal in which they got the international draft pick and they got DL Hall and they got Joey Ortiz. Not a huge return. And I wonder, was there a better offer from a National League team? Because the Brewers are one of those teams like Detroit that are still trying to win. So when they trade a player like this away, like when they traded Corbin Burns or when they traded Devin Williams, they are not giving up. They are trying to win. And hey, when you look at the Corbin Burns trade, Baltimore, when you look at the Devin Williams trade, the Yankees, I do wonder if the Brewers are going to try to guide a Peralta trade where he ends up with an American League team. But I do think that the Mets will be in on him. I think he's, first of all, like you said, he's cheap. He's only making $8 million, which is a steal. And does Stearns like him enough where he wouldn't just be renting Peralta for a year, but would consider giving him a long-term deal? Pablo Lopez, salve our pitching woes, bring up Pablo. That doesn't really work. He won't solve everything, but he'll be a big upgrade near the top of the rotation. This is for Ranger Suarez. The rotation is in danger. Pay for Ranger. Not my top choice, but taking him away from the Phillies would feel nice. A previous emailer kind of poo-pooed him because he's a soft-tossing lefty, which I tell you, considering how hard he actually throws, I guess he's a soft-tossing lefty for 2026. But my God, Jamie Moyer would look at that and say, excuse me? Go out and sign Valdez. Don't cross up Alvarez. That's for Framber Valdez. And you know what I'm talking about. Yes. Framber Valdez is accused of purposely throwing a fastball when a curveball was called because he was pissed off at his catcher. So purposely tried to basically hit his catcher. No more fill-ins. Bring in Dylan. This is Dylan Cease. No more trying to polish turds into diamonds. Time to get a stable frontline guy. Don't wait till spring. Sign Michael King. I want to see the Mets sign one of these guys early on and not wait until later in the offseason. The appealing thing about Michael King is that he is projected to only get a 3-year contract. I've read, and again, they're just projections. What do they mean? All you need is one team to say, hey, we really want him. Here's a 5 or 6 year deal. But if he has to settle for a 3-year deal, I can see that being more appealing, considering Stearns' issues with going further than that. This is from Jerry. Jerry writes, guys, big fan of the pod. Here's my offseason plan for the Mets. First, here's my Scooble trade. Vientos, Acuna, Jet Williams, Brandon Sproat. And if that's not enough, I'd add Ronnie Mauricio. Also, here are the prorated contracts via ESPN for the guys that I would sign. So, all right, he's attaching predicted contracts to the players. Edwin Diaz, 4 years, $60 million. He's getting more than that. That's only $15 million a year. Edwin Diaz is going to get more than that. That's an incorrect projection. Josh Naylor, 3 years, $52 million. Boy, that's another steal. I'm only given a 3-year contract. The average annual is less than 20. Okay, I like these projections. Bo Bichette, 5 years, $130 million. I have a tough time believing the Blue Jays are going to let him go. I think the Blue Jays, after getting to a World Series, he played well in the World Series after he finally got activated. They took care of Vlad, and I think it's going to be more years. I think the money may be relatively accurate, but I think he may end up getting 7 years. Luis Arraez, 2 years, $17 million. Boy, if Luis Arraez has to settle for that kind of contract, I think all you guys would be good with Arraez, despite the flaws in his game. I think Arraez is actually one of the more fascinating names in free agency because it's really tough to figure what teams are going to pay him. Michael King, 3 years, $57 million. Yeah, like we talked about on a 3-year deal, why not? That's also less than $20 million a year. I think he'll do better than that. I think if he ends up with a 3-year deal, it's probably going to be like a Mania contract to $75 million. And then finally, Devin Williams, 3 years, $45 million. Bringing Devin Williams in as the 8th inning guy or the 7th inning guy, far different than actually asking him to replace Edwin Diaz, which is complete Pete Hoffman karma. Because if you guys remember, if you're a Rico listener through and through, early in the season of 2025, when Edwin Diaz maybe wasn't at his best, he was shaky, Hoffman said numerous times he trusts Devin Williams more than Edwin Diaz. So if ultimately, Hoff, you have to live with Devin Williams as the replacement for Edwin Diaz, we are going to call that Hoffman karma. You would have been the one that brought that upon all of us. Just
yeah,
so
but here, okay, that's fine. But here's the deal: like he's got to pitch better than he did last year. Otherwise, I'm screwed. I'll take the Hoffman karma if it works out. I don't want it if it sucks. By the way, can I just go back to something? You totally butchered the email with all the guys with the rhymes. Like,
how did I butcher it? I was reading it.
No, how did you not give him rankings for his best rhymes?
Oh, you want me to rank the rhymes?
I know my top 3.
Go ahead.
Petty for Freddie, which was great. That
Not
was,
bad.
I think, top notch. The I forget the Ranger Suarez one, but that was good. And the King one was, those are the top 3. Freddie, Peralta, the Ranger Suarez, and the King.
Don't wait till spring. Sign Michael King. The
Beautiful.
rotation is in danger. Pay for Ranger. Yeah,
that
one is the best. Yeah.
Those are fantastic. And good, whatever his name is, good job. That was a home freaking run.
Good stuff. I like the creativity. I like the, hey, let's have some fun with this.
By the way, I did look at the rankings, the projected contracts. That's legit by ESPN. I think they're just stupid.
Hey, I think the Edwin Diaz thing is nuts. Edwin Diaz did not
60?
opt out of his deal to make $15 million a year.
Yeah. They're projecting Tyler Rogers 3 years, $27 million. Like, not that means anything, but like, it doesn't make any sense. Some of these numbers that they're coming together. They think Kyle Tucker. Where do you think they're putting him at? By the way,
You're talking about contracts.
Yes.
10 years, $400 million.
Close. 11 years, 418.
Yeah, I don't know if Kyle Tucker's ultimately going to get that, but I think that's the common kind of prediction on him, that you're looking at not quite Soto money, but 10-year contract because he's still relatively young, and somewhere between $37 and $42 million a year, kind of in that range.
Well, hold on. He's going to be opening day. He's going to be 29. All right, now just hear me out. And I understand the difference. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand the difference of Kyle Tucker and Pete Alonso. But you're talking about Kyle Tucker is 29. He's only 2 years younger than Pete Alonso. And we're talking about a difference of $300 million for a guy who last year, who for 2 months hit 1 home run.
Well, the other funny part about that, and I get why. I mean, even though you're right, the age difference is only 2 years. It's not a lot. And Tucker's obviously a really good defender, more so than Pete. But Kyle Tucker has not shown the ability to stay on the field the way Pete has. I mean, Kyle Tucker played 136 games last year, and the year before that played 78 games. He missed more games really in the last year than Pete's missed in his entire career. So I get it, but I don't get it, if that makes any sense, because I think when you look at the durability factor of Alonso, it feels like he doesn't get enough credit for that. And Kyle Tucker's almost getting too much credit,
Yeah, I agree.
Let's hear from Samuel. Samuel writes, I've listened to you on multiple Ricos, and I thank you for saying on episode 581 that the amount the Mets should give Pete Alonso is whatever the best offer is out there from another team, period. It boggles my mind how many people who cover the Mets can be very easy with Steve Cohen's money when it comes to any player, especially players who've never played a day for the team, but are attractive free agents or trade possibilities. But when it comes to Pete Alonso, all of a sudden it's, well, the Mets won't go beyond 3 or 4 years, hiding behind what they think Stearns will do. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but what do you think he should do? People are always willing to say the Mets can make this or that trade and pay down large amounts of traded player comp. We can't get this or get that in free agency and overpay if we have to, if that's what it takes to close the deal. I'm sorry, he said we can go out and overpay if that's what it takes to close the deal. After all, we have Steve Cohen, except for Pete. Then we have to uber analyze every aspect, how old he'll be, when he'll be willing to transition to DH, run prevention, etc., and all that crap. How much should we be willing to pay? Let me rephrase this. How much should we be willing to pay Pete? I think that may have been incorrect. Whatever it takes, that's how much. This is not an emotional idea. It's baseball. The guy's a great slugger. He's not afraid of New York. He's not afraid of the postseason. And yes, let's all see him chase 500 as a Met where he belongs. Want to draw a line in the sand? Fine, but stop the nonsense of drawing that line at 4 years or conditioning any signing of him on his agreeing to DH now full-time. Stop it. Bring back Pete. It's the right move. Run prevention, get better pitchers and great defense up the middle. Let's go win it next year. It is a very fair point that we're so willing to go overboard on years or money or prospects for the guys that have never done anything. But the guys that are here, there's lines in the sand. The years thing, why are we so worried about years when so far, and that's all we can base it on, he has shown no breaking downness? Like he hasn't gotten hurt like we've talked about with Kyle Tucker. There's no sign that he's going to break down other than us just looking at his body and assuming, oh, he will definitely break down. We're not doing it based on anything other than making guesses and assumptions. And look, I guess I'll say this now before the Rico Brogna we do, where I have to scream, he's gone, and there's nothing we can do about it. And hopefully we don't have to do that. The beauty of having an owner like Steve Cohen is that you'll go a little bit further when you have to. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and argue that 7 years is smart for Pete Alonso. It's not. I don't think it's smart for anybody. But when you have an owner like this, and you have a player that, in my opinion, forgetting the emotion, gives you the best chance to win next year. Like, there are other options that are intriguing in terms of replacing the big bat of Pete Alonso. I've admitted that, but I still think, pound for pound, taking the emotion aside, when you factor in the reliability that he brings, the proven New York commodity that he brings, that they are better off keeping him. Why not go an extra year to make sure you keep him? Why not? At the end of the day, this is the same franchise that wrote a huge check just to get rid of Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and get back a prospect. Is that better than writing the huge check for that extra year you went for Pete that didn't really work out? So I overall understand your point, Samuel.
Can I ask a question?
No.
I'm being. Oh, thank you.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
You're so difficult sometimes. It's so tough to work with you, Ev. No, but seriously, I have a serious question to all Mets fans out there. All of the, whether it's supporters of Pete or the fact that you don't like the people, even the ones that say like we can't give him more than 4 years, whatever the case is. Think about it. Look in the mirror. Do you want this guy to be a lifelong Met? Yes or no? Do you want him to wear another uniform? Or do you want him to only wear the Met uniform? If you're the person that wants him to just wear the Met uniform the rest of his career, what does it make a difference on how many years you sign him to? Right? Isn't that
dude? I remember saying this about Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge was getting to free agency, and everyone had their line in the sand. Like, I can't go to 9 years. I'll go 8 years. I can't go to 9 years. And I was yelling at Yankee fans. I was like, what's wrong with you people? Like, what? Why are we freaking out over something that's a decade from now? Like, yeah, we get it. Aaron Judge will be old. He'll probably be washed up. It'll probably be the end of a bad contract. Well, guess what? Isn't that worth keeping him on your team? Like, just so you go through that final year or two, or dare I say 3, in which it's a bad contract? Wouldn't it be worth it? And, ask the Yankee fans, since half of our audience are Yankee fans, apparently, who listen to the Rico Brogna, knowing what you've now gotten out of Judge over the last 3 years, jokes aside about not winning a World Series, but wouldn't this be worth a bad final year that 3 years ago you were unwilling to give him because you drew an imaginary line in the sand? So it's not me defending like, 7 years would be smart for Pete Alonso. Not that he's getting 7 years, but I'm making a point here. I'm not defending that it would be smart, but I'm saying, would you really think it's worth letting him leave, making your job of building the team a little bit more tougher? And yeah, the emotional aspect of him not being here, being on a different team, all because I couldn't go that extra year. I just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And
if let me ask you a question. If the last 3 years of his, say the first 4 years, it's the numbers that we normally see where he's hitting, 30 plus home runs.
It's worth it.
And then the last 3 years, he hits a total of 65 home runs, drives in a 258 RBIs. That's about 240 and an OPS of 700. Would you be okay with that?
How many years of good success are you giving me?
he's 31 now, so up until the age of 37.
Oh, 100%. But I don't think we're ever going to have to talk about a contract that long. Like, I think we're looking at a 5-year deal. If I had to guess right now, 4 or 5-year deal. And unfortunately, I'm not convinced the Mets would even go there. And that's what's going to infuriate a lot of us, that if he ends up signing a 5-year deal and the Mets are only willing to go to like 2 years or 3 years, it in a weird way reminds me of DeGrom. Because, and I know we played this game of, well, DeGrom didn't want to come back, blah, 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 blah. The Mets weren't willing to give him the years anywhere close to what Texas was willing to give him. And what's funny now, and we should do, I have it written down as a tentative offseason Rico Brogna, the alternate universe where the Mets signed Jacob DeGrom, where they match that Texas offer or they come in with that offer, how things would have been different. And one of the things that would be different is DeGrom would still be in the rotation and would be their best starter right now. And I think our approach to the offseason would be a little bit different, because you'd see DeGrom and McClain and be like, okay, maybe one more starter and you'll feel good. And remember, that was always the biggest concern. Well, you can't give them 5 years. Meanwhile, it was the first 2 years that were a waste, right? And it's year 3, 4, 5 that are like, oh, not bad. So it shows you how, we overanalyze this sometimes, and you just can't predict the future as much as we try.
Well, we saw that with Verlander. Verlander had Tommy John surgery, then won a Cy Young the next year, didn't he?
He did. He won a Cy Young the next year. Then came to the Mets. How'd that work out? Final email. This is from Marty speaking to Pete Alonso. No one's talking about what seems to be the perfect landing spot for the Polar Bear should he leave the New York Mets. I believe it's the San Diego Padres. The talk around the club has been about the need for power. Their home run total was low. Coincidentally, they need a first baseman, and we all know about A.J. Preller's willingness to spend big. As a Met fan, I'm hoping he stays, but don't be surprised if the Friars get involved in the bidding. Yeah, I could see San Diego. I could see Seattle. I mentioned Cincinnati before. The Red Sox are a very hot team that's being talked about. I was worried a little bit about the Phillies. It's not going to be the Phillies, because even if they lost Kyle Schwarber, I don't think they're going to move Bryce Harper out of the outfield, out of first base, right? So now you'd be signing Pete with like no ability to play first base. I think where Pete ends up, whether it's the Mets, the Red Sox, or wherever, is he's going to be the first baseman, and naturally he's going to DH more. I don't think this needs to be a big thing. I don't think there needs to be a conversation. Like, Pete Alonso knows as he gets older, he's going to DH more. And ultimately, he's going to sign because the money was right. He's going to sign because someone gave him a lot of years. And then whatever the freaking manager decides to do, whether Pete loves it or not, he's going to do. So I think we make too big of a deal out of, is he willing to DH? I mean, he's going to do what he's told to do. And I think as he gets older, naturally, he's going to DH a little bit more. Starting pitching free agents. That'll be our next focus on the Rico Brogna, which we will be posting on Sunday evening. So if you're free Sunday night after the Jets and Giants lose, check YouTube, check wherever you download your podcasts, and you will be able to listen and or watch, completely up to you, the next edition of the Rico Brogna, in which we will focus heavily on free agent starting pitching. We'll go through a lot of the names, the kind of contracts they may be looking at, the pluses, the minuses, do we want them? We'll break through or break down basically all of them. So that's coming up on the next Rico Brogna. If you want to email us and be a part of a mailbag edition of the ricob@gmail.com. We're going to try to do this every week. I think we've done this now 3 weeks in a row. So usually on Friday night, if you consume it live on YouTube, or maybe on Saturday, we try to give you a mailbag. So email us any question, any comment, whether it's about the offseason, whether about other Met stuff, Met history, open to everything, the ricob@gmail.com. Thank you very much for hanging out with us on another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.